Hey, Carol, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting on the back porch of my brother's lake house looking at other people's boat docks.
Oh, nice.
No, I didn't call my co-host Carol to brag about the lake life. I'm calling because I have some weird news to share. I spent the previous morning in Corsicana, the town where Shelley Watkins lived until she was murdered in 1993. Then I drove up Highway 31 to the town of Athens, where law enforcement accused Shelley's husband, Jerry Mack, of killing her.
Went down to Corsicana, looked at all the newspaper archives in the library, and then went over to Athens, looked at the case files, and then I went on up to Kilgore.
Kilgore, Texas, where I'm from, is just another hour down the same highway. My brother's been letting me crash when I'm here, poking around for clues in Shelley's case.
All right. So when I was in Athens, Henderson County, looking through the case files for Jerry Mack Watkins,
Yes.
the most important document in all of those hundreds of pages was the affidavit for the search warrant, where the investigator laid out why he believed Jerry Mack was guilty and why they should go search his house. As you know, we know from newspaper stories that some of the stuff that the investigator had already found out was, neighbors had heard arguing outside of their house. The lights had been on all hours of the night. And
Yeah,
Jerry
until
Mack,
4:30 in the morning.
yeah. And Jerry Mack, like, claiming that Shelley had spilled paint in the trunk, and that's why he had removed the carpet and some of the panels and taken it to the dealership to get replaced. All this just really damaging information about Jerry Mack, which led the judge to approve the search warrant. And so I'm reading through this. It's a 5-page affidavit for the search warrant.
Yeah.
Here's page 1. Flip the page. Here's page 5. Pages 2, 3, and 4 are gone.
You are kidding me.
At some point in the past 30
Holy
years,
moly.
someone has snuck in or requested this case file, which anyone in the public can do because it's public information. But someone was reading through the file, and when no one was looking at the district clerk's office, they slid out those 3 pages. The most damning 3 pages in the entire case file are missing.
Holy shit. Are you kidding me?
And the little clerks working there were really nice and very helpful and, interested in what I was doing, and just the sweetest ladies. And when I pointed it out to them, they were just like, huh, well, that was before my time. They just, like, it didn't compute, and so I think they went and asked the district clerk about it, and she also just kind of blew me off from what I understand. So yesterday I wrote a letter to her, and I sent copies to the district judge, the district attorney, and to Sheriff Bodie Hillhouse, saying, this happened. This is tampering with public documents. This is very important. I'm asking you to track down this document and restore it to the public record and send me a copy. Hopefully that will light a fire under her to to find that document, because I'm sure, with it being an active investigation, I'm sure that's still in the sheriff's office records, or maybe the DA has a copy of it or something.
Okay, I'm sorry. This absolutely blows my mind because it is just so corrupt.
Yeah.
And it's such an extension of all of these convolutions of corruption that have gone on around this case. I'm just stunned. That's the only word for it. And the other part of this is that you have to wonder who had the interest to go and do that, how recently that happened. I mean, if those ladies were saying it was before my time, it was before my time. Well, how much before your time was it, honey? And do they have records of people who have come in and requested to look at those case files? I mean, there's some way to track down who this could have been.
No, I don't think they keep that record. They didn't ask me to sign any forms or anything when I checked it out. They just gave it to me.
It could have been anybody. It could have been anybody. This is just mind-numbing. Who could have done this?
Well, you have to think, who stood to lose by having that information out in the public for anyone to see.
My name is Wes Ferguson.
And I'm Carol Dawson. You're listening to The Unforgotten, Season 1, The Labor Day Ghost. Chapter 4, Nothing But Blood.
I was upset that I couldn't see the entire affidavit for the search of Jerry Mack's house when he was being investigated for Shelley's death. So much key information, public information, just gone. It hadn't been sealed by a judge either. Someone took it. The letter I sent to all the county officials did get their attention. A deputy clerk asked around to see if anyone had the complete document. It turns out the copy of the affidavit in the district attorney's case file was also missing those same 3 pages, which was really strange. That either means someone in the DA's office tampered with the file, or the affidavit was missing those 3 crucial pages before it ever landed in the DA's office. Who knows? And get this, the sheriff's office said they didn't have the affidavit at all. Not a single page, which was even weirder. You could run wild with conspiracy theories. We asked around looking for answers.
No, I have no idea.
This is former Assistant District Attorney Mike Head.
There was not any sort of motion to seal or anything of that nature. Removing those from the file would be a felony.
Nor did it make sense for the sheriff's office not to have the affidavit. It's at the heart of one of the county's most notorious unsolved cases. And it was written by their own investigator, Larry Warwick. He didn't know who removed the pages either.
Why would they do that?
Well, good question.
Well, that's part of Jerry Mack's thing again.
Then I came up with a last-ditch idea. I've been a reporter long enough to know that what often looks like a conspiracy or corruption from the outside is usually just government incompetence or indifference. The sheriff's department probably had the file this whole time. They just couldn't be bothered to go look for it when their colleague at the district clerk's office asked about it. So I did what I should have done from the get-go. I put in a formal request using our state's Public Information Act, which legally requires government officials to hand over documents to average citizens like me. I figured the county would fight me on this one. They'd say the affidavit was part of an active case, and sharing it with me would compromise their investigation, even if the investigation had gone cold over the decades. 6 days after I filed my request, I was back on the phone with Carol.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, they had it.
Oh my gosh. Was it at the sheriff's department?
Yep. It's so funny. I mean, they told the deputy clerk that they didn't have it, but when I filed the request, I guess they were legally obligated to do the actual digging for it. And there it was. So we have all 5 pages.
Fantastic, Wes. Oh. And you've got a copy of it now?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Please. Shoot it to me. Please.
No exaggeration. This was a huge break for us. The old news articles from the local newspapers in Corsicana and Athens were not always precise, and they were written on tight deadlines, which could result in errors. They often didn't give the names of witnesses either. Now we had those names. It also told us more about Shelley's last day at the lake, when her sister-in-law said she seemed nervous and jittery. And it lays out Jerry Mack's alleged actions on the days after Shelley died.
You know, it has a lot about the timeline, about when Jerry was, when he took the car to Dallas, when he told Lewis.
What is it say about when he told Lewis?
So he told Lewis on September 9th that Shelley had walked away from their residence. He waited to report her missing.
If you'll remember, Jerry Mack's friend Louis Palis, the Corsicana police sergeant, had told newspapers that Jerry Mack informed him of Shelley's disappearance on September 7th, the very next day after she was last seen alive. But the affidavit said Jerry Mack actually didn't inform Lewis for another 2 days. An interesting discrepancy. Poker queen Carolyn Taylor also makes an appearance.
Across the street from the Watkins residence, Carolyn was at home on September 6th and 7th that night with, they said she had several friends over for a party, but that's the poker game.
Of course.
And she said at 12:30 a.m., she noticed that both of the Watkins vehicles were home in the driveway. Jerry's red Jeep and Shelley's white BMW, and the lights were on at their residence.
Ah.
And at 4 a.m., she noticed the cars were still in the driveway, lights still on in the house. And Carolyn said that it would have been obvious to Shelley that Carolyn was home and awake at approximately 11:30 when Shelley left.
Yep.
So she's saying, like, Shelley would have come over here if something was wrong. She didn't do that. So she wouldn't have just been stomping off into the woods or onto Interstate 45.
I've also heard that, she would have gone next door to Carolyn across the street to Stacy's house because Stacy Johnson and she were very, very close.
So yeah, most of this was stuff we already knew, but the affidavit confirmed it. The affidavit also brought up David Williams, the neighbor you heard in Chapter 3.
The investigator, Larry Warwick, talked to David Williams, according to this affidavit, which is interesting because David told me that he had never spoken to him.
I don't know all the details. I just know basically I just was the neighbor.
But I kind of would assume that David just doesn't remember that from 30 years ago because his name's all over the affidavit. So Warwick has a taped statement from David Williams. Williams said that his wife got home at about 11 p.m. that night. The lights at the Watkins house were off. Williams said he got up at 1:30 a.m. and again at 3:30 a.m. and noticed at both times the lights at the Watkins house were on. David indicated he thought Shelley and Jerry Watkins were fighting because of the late hour and the lights being on.
That's important. We have two neighbors, David Williams and Carolyn Taylor, who both noticed all the lights on both inside and outside the Watkins house long after Jerry Mack said that Shelley walked off and he went to bed.
And then on September 8th, which would have been, 2 days later, David saw Jerry at the Watkins house and asked him about Shelley. And then that's when Jerry told David that he took Shelley's BMW to Dallas to have it cleaned and get new tires. Williams stated he felt this was odd because of Shelley's disappearance.
That it was literally the next day.
Yeah.
That he whisked that car to Dallas, got new tires, and got it detailed.
After being awake all night with the lights on, he told the same thing to his other neighbor, Robert Johnson, about taking the car to be cleaned. And Robert also thought this was strange since Shelley was missing.
Wow.
We have no way of knowing whether Shelley's BMW was ever driven onto the banks of the Trinity River, where she was wrapped in plastic and thrown in the water. But let's think this through. If her BMW was driven across the bare ground near the water's edge, it probably would have left some dirt on her car. Shelley had relatively new tires. Her tires would have left tread marks on the ground, and these tread marks could be traced back to the BMW. These would all be good reasons to get a professional cleaning and 4 new tires. And remember that guy, John McCollum, from the last chapter? He claimed to see an expensive car on the Trinity River Bridge at 4:30 the morning after Shelley was last seen. He also reported seeing an individual engaged in some unknown task on the bridge. He later identified this individual as Jerry Mack Watkins.
You have an eyewitness that picked a man out of a lineup that's parked on the bridge that crosses the Trinity River where her body was found.
This is Larry Warwick again.
That's pretty incriminating evidence, if you ask me.
We talked to the bridge witness, John McCollum, on the phone a couple of times. He was reluctant to share what he remembered.
I just wondered, if we write a story, we put names to things if they can't sue me for slander. And it could always go back to trial. I don't know what the laws apply to that.
I got the sense that John felt like he was burned the last time he came forward.
They did release my name and everything, and that's true. They shouldn't have done so. I will say that. Our judicial system that was in place there was really corrupt all the way through. And that's why we're still where we're at.
After 2 short phone conversations with John, he stopped answering my calls, and he wasn't home when I knocked on his door. I'll keep trying, but for now, as for what he saw that morning on the Trinity River Bridge, we can only go by the information provided in the affidavit, which we now have.
November 15th, Almost exactly 2 months to the day after Shelley Watkins' body had been retrieved from the Trinity River, a special grand jury convened in the Athens-Henderson County, Texas courthouse. They were there to decide whether anyone should be indicted for Shelley Watkins' violent homicide. In the process, they would review all the evidence that had been gathered so far by Texas Ranger Ray Nutt and Chief Investigator Larry Warwick. Jerry Mack Watkins hired a famous Houston criminal defense attorney named Jack Zimmerman to represent him.
Jerry Mack? Yeah, I don't think he lowered it up real quick.
On November 30th of 1993, Larry Warwick finally signed a sworn affidavit naming Jerry Mack Watkins as the chief suspect in his wife's death and asking for a warrant to search the Watkins house and property. Amid Jerry Mack's alleged refusal to cooperate with investigators or allow them onto the property, it had taken nearly 3 whole months for Warwick to get the search warrant issued. Now, with the judge's authorization, Warwick and other members of the Sheriff's Department, Texas Ranger Ray Nutt, and fellow Rangers, and members of the District Attorney's Office were ready to enter the Watkins home, hoping their search would yield strong physical evidence tying Jerry Mack directly to the crime. Larry Warwick's affidavit states that during the nearly 3 months since Shelley's death, her husband, Jerry Mack, and their 2 daughters had been staying at his sister Janice Watkins King's house, leaving his own house untended since the night of the murder. But there were several potential contradictions to the untended theory. One of them comes from a message left on a telephone answer machine.
I understand from Sandy that you were about to go and visit her. Well, and that's what was the very haunting part for me, too.
This is Linda Dupuy, a friend Shelley had held dear since their kindergarten years together in Toledo, Ohio.
It was 2 to 3 months before her death that, almost like out of the blue, she contacted me, and we talked on the phone for like 2-3 hours and caught up on everything, laughed about things that happened when we were little. And I said, hey, why don't I try to see if I can come to Texas and visit you? So we're like, oh, that's great. Let me know when you make the arrangements.
For the past 2 months, Linda and Shelley had planned for Linda to come to Corsicana for a reunion. She already had her plane ticket booked, but when she tried to call Shelley before her trip, only the answer machine answered. Jerry Mack had already taken his 2 daughters and left the house empty. He did have someone else dropping in, though, someone who might have just been there to check on the house or to clean up and take care of any outstanding business, such as checking the answer machine for messages to Jerry Mack or Shelley.
So then 2 weeks before, I thought, well, I better call her and tell her, where to pick me up, what the flight is and all that. So I called, didn't get an answer, and I left a voicemail. And the next day, her brother-in-law called me and said, oh, she's been dead for 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And I was shocked. I didn't even, I don't think I really asked him too many questions because I was in shock. It was like, my God, I just talked to her like a month ago. We made all these plans. I think I asked him, oh my God, what happened? And I believe that he was the one that said, oh, she went out for a pack of cigarettes one night and never came home again.
That's what he told you?
That's what he told me. That's all that I had heard at that point.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
I'm sure you already know that that is actually not what happened.
Oh, yeah, I know that's not what happened at all.
Presumably, Ronnie Watkins had been over at his brother's house for security checks, answer machine updates, or whatever other cleanup or maintenance chores needed doing. So he was able to return Linda's call and let her know to cancel her trip plans. But another of those contradictions about the untended house was expressed by former Assistant District Attorney Mike Head. On the same day the judge executed the search warrant of the Watkins house, Mike followed Texas Ranger Ray Nutt, investigator Larry Warwick, and their search crews on the drive from Athens to the Watkins Corsicana residence. He had been asked to do so by his new boss, Henderson County District Attorney E. Ray Andrews.
I remember it being a high priority with E-Ray at the time, that they were going to do a thorough investigation, that they really were looking into it. I was along as an assistant DA on the execution of the search warrant. And that was unusual that we would actually send someone from the DA's office.
The search crew was determined to sift through every item and inch of the Watkins home for any link to her death. They took 9 hours to do it, conducting a minute examination of everything in the house and garage. Unfortunately, for most of the clues they'd have looked for, their search fell just too late.
Ray Nutt used what was called luminol at the time to try to see if there was any evidence of blood in the garage or driveway. And my recollection is that he had the concrete floor of the garage repainted and the driveway repaved as well.
Wow.
Which, I guess if you have the resources to do that, it covers the trail pretty well.
Gary Cripps, Sandy's husband and Jerry Mack's brother-in-law, also says the Watkins family poured a slab of concrete inside a pole barn on some of their property up the street from Jerry Mack and Shelley's house not long after Shelley's death.
I've been in that barn before it was paved. We took a tour of his little farm, the zoo that they had out there. And it was a huge pole barn. And they had little Jeeps where they would take school kids, by the dozens out there and do all of that. And it was a big barn, but it was still a dirt floor barn. That's where she was taken care of in a private place. I mean, you're not sitting along the side of the road, wrapping up a body and doing these things. You need some privacy to do that.
Gary is speculating about Shelley's body being wrapped and taped in the barn, but it is a theory shared by law enforcement. Investigators would not search the barn until later. After the home search, Jerry Mack's attorney, Jack Zimmerman, told the Athens Daily Review that Larry Warwick's affidavit was riddled with inaccuracies. He also said that the search of the Watkins home and Shelley's car had not turned up a shred of evidence. Zimmerman's assessment made for a splashy headline, but it wasn't quite accurate. Christy and Larry Warwick can comment on that even now, 30 years later.
And they searched the house and used luminol on everything. I don't know what y'all found in the house. Do you remember what y'all found in the house?
Nothing but blood.
The return and inventory document that Larry Warwick swore to and filed with Navarro County after the search concluded states this list: 4 samples of suspected blood, 1 sample from the front door handle, and 3 taken from the garage floor of the Watkins residence. 1 towel located in a storage room inside the garage of the Watkins residence with suspected blood. But what did the luminol really reveal? Could its use help discover a physical link between Jerry Mack Watkins and his wife's death? And did any cleanup, such as bleach wiping, repainting, or soap scrubbing, that might possibly have occurred anywhere after she died, make a difference as to whether or not such evidence could be used in court? Luminol can detect blood stains even when surfaces have been cleaned with bleach, as well as getting concealed by up to 8 layers of water-based or solvent-based paint after getting bleach cleaned. But luminol is a water-based agent that can also dilute blood stains, especially blood that has already been diluted through a cleaning process, and therefore can push the stain beyond the genetic marker analysis detection limits. This also makes it hard to identify exactly when the blood got spilled or how old it is.
My name is Haley Spence, and you are currently employed by the University of Texas at Austin Police Department. So like the Longhorn? Yeah. So I'm on the university campus, crime scene evidence supervisor.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Haley. If you didn't quite follow that, I'm on the phone right now with Haley Spence. She's the crime scene evidence supervisor for the police department at the University of Texas at Austin. Haley uses a luminol-based test substance called Blue Star to detect unseen blood.
Well, this is what I want to ask you about. This case was being investigated in the late autumn of 1993, and they did use luminol to track down some blood stains. And at least 3 of the blood stains had already been painted over on a garage floor, but they were still able to detect them. Knowing what you know about previous use of luminol, could you tell me how much luminol could detect, given any sort of cleanup or painting over or anything like that?
Yeah, so you don't need a lot. Basically, you spray it and it will illuminate in like a bright blue color. And so one person is kind of spraying it, and then another person is taking the photo at the same time that it's being sprayed because it doesn't stay kind of lit up, is the best way to say that, for very long. And so you want to capture the photo kind of as it's happening. And, that's for the use of blood that you can't see. So you wouldn't use luminol if you can see blood. That's only blood that's been cleaned up or you can't see it on the surface. It kind of shows you like something's at least been cleaned up. So it still gives you some kind of data to go off of, but just maybe you won't get everything you need out of that stain.
Right. That is very interesting because, as I said before, 3 of these blood stains were detected underneath a painted surface, and one was detected on the front door handle. So they would have been able to tell, for instance, on the door handle, if bleach had been used to clean it up.
No matter what, when you spray these types of chemicals on an area and it gives you a positive reaction, you're still going to swab that and send it to a DNA lab. You can't just confirm right then and there that that's blood until you send it off. So it's kind of just like a presumptive positive. So you're presuming that it's positive, but you don't have clarification yet. And that's what the lab does for you.
I see. Okay. Um, well, what about luminol used on a painted surface uh, that has blood underneath paint? Can it detect it very well?
It should be able to detect blood.
The 4 samples of suspected blood found on the garage floor and front door handle of Shelley and Jerry Mack's home were seized for testing by the Texas Department of Public Safety Forensic Lab. None of the old news accounts we've read ever stated whether the samples turned out to be blood or were not blood, or the tests were inconclusive. Larry Warwick says the investigators found blood on the Watkins property, but several months after the search, Jerry Mack's attorney, Jack Zimmerman, filed a motion claiming just the opposite. The samples were tested, and he said they were not blood. It seemed that the evidence obtained so far would have to remain under the classification of circumstantial, with the exception, of course, of John McCullum, the witness who claimed he had seen Jerry Mack Watkins on the Highway 85 bridge crossing the Trinity River, engaged in some kind of activity next to an expensive parked car at 4:30 in the morning, about 5 hours after Shelley was last seen alive. There was just one problem.
Do you remember your impression of him and his credibility?
The story he told was probably the strongest link we had.
This is Mike Head once again.
Because as I recall, and again, this has been close to 30 years ago, but that Watkins had I believe it was a white BMW, and that this guy was coming back. I believe he had gotten off work, worked a night shift, and was coming from west to east on that road, came around the corner, and saw what appeared to be a white BMW with the trunk open, and saw someone getting what looked like a bundle out of the trunk. He didn't stop, didn't really think anything out of the ordinary enough to make any sort of report or, do anything that was contemporaneous as far as, notes or anything like that. I think the big issue was where he came around the corner. It was a long distance to where the bridge was. And there were questions about could he have really identified Watkins? Um, but I mean, he was certainly someone we intended to use at trial. I don't remember him having any sort of convictions or conflicts or anything that would have made him particularly impeachable as a witness. It was really just more a matter of recollection and why it would have stood out in his mind that he would have really noticed a white BMW and that sort of thing, just without having some other information to make it interesting to him at the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And he picked Watkins out of a lineup too, right?
I believe he did. I believe that's true.
Sensing weakness, Zimmerman attacked McCollum's credibility during the grand jury hearings. He also filed an affidavit in motion claiming that McCollum had given contradictory statements, although he didn't say what those contradictions were.
I don't remember it being so much an issue of law enforcement not believing him as much as we just felt like he was really going to get picked apart by the defense lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
And we needed other things to try to tie it together. But he was, in my opinion, probably the strongest thing we had other than just circumstantial stuff.
Mike had a lot of respect for Jerry Mack's choice of counsel, Jack B. Zimmerman. A lot of people around Texas recognized Zimmerman for the big cowboy hat he always wore, but he was just as well known for his legal prowess. Not much later, Zimmerman would enter the national spotlight as one of the negotiators for the Branch Davidians during the notorious FBI siege in Waco.
Zimmerman's a very good lawyer. I've known him for years. He's very honest, ethical, hard-charging, aggressive lawyer.
Although Zimmerman declined our request for an interview, he was on an interview show called the Killer Cross-Examination Podcast a couple of years ago.
My guest is none other than the legendary trial lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, and American hero, Jack Zimmerman.
What I try to do on cross-examination is be totally prepared as to any statement that person has given, any statement that somebody else is that is contradictory to that state, to what their testimony is going to be, and try to lock them in to taking a position that you can attack later on successfully.
That's exactly what Zimmerman tried to do for his client, Jerry Mack Watkins. While questioning Texas Ranger Ray Nutt, he got Nutt to admit that, he had some reservations about the credibility of John McCollum's testimony, claiming to have seen Jerry Mack on the Trinity River Bridge the morning after Shelley vanished. Investigator Larry Warwick also admitted that McCollum's story seemed just a little too good to be true. With fresh doubts raised about John McCollum's testimony, Jack Zimmerman declared there was no real evidence tying Jerry Mack to his wife's death. He was truly an innocent man. Zimmerman also said the suspected blood spots found in the garage and at the front door were just insect debris. And what about the 4 new tires for the BMW and having all the soft linings completely replaced in the car trunk? Zimmerman said Jerry Mack was only trying to please his wife and smooth their relationship when she got back. If Jerry Mack had wanted to hide the work done to Shelley's car, Zimmerman added, he wouldn't have paid for the transactions with his own check and credit card.
So there's a conflict. You're creating a conflict. And then the jury decides which version is true.
On December 20th, 1993, 5 days after his 40th birthday and 3 days after Shelley's 36th birthday, the grand jury reconvened and brought an indictment against Jerry Mack Watkins for his wife's murder. He surrendered in Athens the next day, December 21st. There, he was formally arrested and then was released on a $75,000 bond. 2 men stood surety for the bond's amount. One was Ronnie Watkins, Jerry Mack's older brother. The other was Jerry Mack's close friend and civil attorney, Glenn Sodd, of Dawson, Sodd, Moe, and Means, the law office housing the Watkins families and business lawyers in Corsicana, Texas, my own father's law firm. In April of 1994, Jerry Mack Watkins sat through his pretrial hearing in Athens, Texas. At that time, the judge, Jack Holland, set his trial date for August 15th, late in the summer, less than 11 months after Shelley vanished into the night from the home she shared with Jerry Mack and her daughters, and 1 month short of the date when her body was recovered from the Trinity River.
Levine and Zimmerman were pushing for a speedy trial. Our thought process was they wanted it tried quickly because they were concerned that something else might come up, that the longer the investigation went on, that there might be some other witness pop up or some other information. And so they were hoping they could get a not guilty verdict in a jeopardy bar in case anything else ever came up.
As the date for the trial approached, it began to grow more and more clear that some people considered Jerry Mack Watkins' upcoming moment in court would have a highly possible outcome, one that the defense would not like, facing off against prosecutors E. Ray Andrews, Mike Head, and the other assistant district attorney in Andrews' office, Donna Little, these days, Donna Little Bennett.
When E. Ray was not drinking, he was a very good lawyer. I think if E. Ray and Donna and I would have tried the case, I think there was a better than 50-50 chance of getting a conviction.
And then came another twist of events, one so publicly unexpected and so wild that no one outside of the most important players could have predicted it. That's next time on The Unforgotten.
Thank you for listening to The Unforgotten. Get updates, photos, case files, and more when you sign up for our newsletter at unforgottenpod.com. The Unforgotten is a free-range production. Season 1, The Labor Day Ghost, is created, written, and hosted by Carol Dawson and me, Wes Ferguson. I'm the executive producer here at Free Range. Audio recording, editing, and mixing by Austin Sisler at Eastside Studios in Austin, Texas. Scored by Austin Sisler and Jamie Cummins. Our theme song, Ghost, is written and performed by Corsicana's own Will Mechatron Jones. If you support our efforts to shine a new light on Shelley Watkins' cold case, please like, subscribe, give us a review, and tell your friends. Thanks again, and see you soon.